Hello, today I will be doing a psychoanalytic analysis of the short story The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Gilman. This story follows a woman diagnosed with a medical condition, specifically a mental illness, and it kind of focuses on the way that she mentally changes throughout the story because of the lack of self-expression that she is able to participate in. In the story, the woman is diagnosed by her husband, John, who is a physician, and in an attempt to cure her of her illness, he prescribes her to absolute rest, and he puts mental and physical constraints on her to ensure that she focuses on getting better. Although it's not specifically stated what condition she's suffering with, some might assume, based off of evidence from the text, that she's dealing with postpartum depression and possibly anxiety. And throughout the story, we can see that she generally really disagrees with the treatment that's placed upon her by her husband. She's locked up in a room with yellow wallpaper and is not allowed to really go outside and really do anything that she enjoys because she is simply directed to focus on resting. One of the big constraints that's placed on her in the story is that she's not allowed to write. John warns her that she needs to use her self-control to suppress her imagination because he worries that she will slip into madness otherwise. However, ironically, the restriction and the constraint of not being able to express herself leads her to constantly desire and need some sort of emotional and intellectual outlet. And so she resorts to keeping a secret journal, which she describes as a relief to her mind. Throughout the story, she says a number of things that show her opposition to her treatment. One of them being, I sometimes fancy that in my condition, if I had less opposition and more society and stimulus, but John says the very worst thing I can do is think about my condition, and I confess that it always makes me feel bad, so I will let it alone and talk about the house. This quote shows that although the woman knows what would help her improve with her condition, which she says is basically just to be more stimulated and to have something to do, her needs are basically ignored and not accounted for by her husband. And we can see in this quote that she goes along with what he wants and she is submissive to his orders, and therefore her feelings about her treatment aren't accounted for. She ends up directing all of her attention and focus on her surroundings, specifically the yellow wallpaper in her room that she stays in. And through her dialogue and characterization of the wallpaper, we get the sense that she's slowly slipping into madness. The way that she talks about the wallpaper so excessively, going into details about it and comparing the shapes of it to the silhouettes of women, shows that mentally she's starting to deteriorate, and I believe that this is because of the lack of expression and the lack of creative outlet that she needs in order to improve. At the end of the story, the woman ends up ripping the wallpaper off of the walls and yelling, like, "I've got out at last. I've pulled off the paper so you can't put me back." In a way, this can be perceived as the narrator liberating herself from her husband and from this forced treatment placed upon her. But the liberation here is almost at the cost of her sanity. her breaking down the wallpaper could symbolize that she has lost herself and is breaking down and has become mad. And because she had no outlet, she had to resort to focusing all of her attention on something, and it ended up being the wallpaper in the story. The overarching theme that I pulled out from this is that an inactive mind and being disengaged can lead to madness and loss of sanity, and that people need mental stimulation in order to stay stable and balanced. The story to me kind of brings up the importance of self-expression and the things and the damage that can happen if someone is so constrained and so limited from having a healthy way to express themselves and express their feelings. Because I believe that if the woman had more power over her treatment, and if she had more autonomy over the way that she was treated, since she had a clear idea about what would make her feel better, that the outcome of the story would have been completely different. So therefore, to tie everything together from a psychoanalytic analysis and standpoint, the moral of the story, I believe, is that the mind needs to stay active and the mind needs to stay engaged in order to stay stable and to stay balanced. Thank you for watching this video of my psychoanalytic reading.